cameras are always, sorry about that. Cameras are always a big part of my life. And because of that, I was really curious from a young age. I started to take it more seriously between our 10 to 12 years old when I was gifted my first camera. I did some summer camps and some lessons, but I didn't take it more seriously until after I finished first year university when I was still at Queen's. I found that my passion grew a lot and I started to really consider if I could make this into a career. So since then, I have been an event photographer for the past 5 years in a few organizations. And in the height of the pandemic in 2020, I started my own business to shoot portraits, lifestyle, and event photography. So today's agenda will be as follows. First, I'm going to be diving in with pre-shooting, how I prepare, my shoot essentials, when I'm at a shoot, how I make the environment as best as possible. I'm going to be lightly touching on post-production, but most things will be focused on what I just mentioned. And then finally, some tips and tricks on how you can get started today. So preparation, let's talk about prep. I feel like this is something a lot of people glance over when in fact it is a huge foundation building process to make sure that your shoot goes as smoothly as possible. The first thing I like to start to do is creating a mood board. If you don't know what a mood board is, essentially it is a collage of inspirational images, whether it is hair, makeup, poses, or location. Having all these images in one space really helps curate your vision and make sure that you get your concept in check. You can find images and create your mood board through Pinterest, Instagram, you can screenshot on your phone. Oftentimes I am inspired by film and TV, so sometimes I screenshot cinematic stills as well. Next would be location. I feel like alongside your concept, location is a huge part. They really intertwine and can help elevate your overall image. So if you take a look at this portrait of Rebecca here, with her flowy dress and her holding this bouquet, it makes sense for you to be shooting in nature. And I just find that all just is very cohesive. One thing I would recommend if you are shooting outdoors or in natural light is to scout ahead of time. Oftentimes before a big shoot, I go out a couple days before. I bring a friend, family member, or I just go on my own at the time that I plan to shoot. So then I can play around with my camera settings, get a better gist of the location, figure out what poses I want to do in which areas. Because say if you're shooting for a golden light session in the summer, which I often do a lot, golden hour, there's such a finite amount of time that you really want to maximize your time when you're there. Next would be communication and ensuring that everyone's in the know. You want to make sure everyone knows the plan, when to meet, what the situation is. So then again, everything is effective and everything runs smoothly. The quote I want to leave with this slide is, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. Although my high school science teacher was talking about exams, I really do think this can apply to your shoots because the more prepared you are, the more confident you're going to feel, and overall your outcome will be a lot better and in the way that you want it. Next, I thought I'd do a little YouTuber what's in my bag. Here are some essentials that I always have with my shoots to make sure that it's a good time. First would be water. I feel like this is very self-explanatory, but on a really hot day, for example, with Photosoc, when we were doing the top 9 photo locations at UBC, it was a really hot day in September. So thank goodness I had my Nalgene with water because you never want to be dehydrated. It's just not great. Also, it could be nice for you to bring some water for your model so that they can get a break too. Next is an absolute mandatory, music speakers and music. Shooting in silence is a definite buzzkill. So getting a really sick playlist going can help loosen everyone up, relax them, and really get them into the mindset. Next would be your phone for obvious communication reasons, but in a pinch, if you forget your poses, you can screenshot some things in advance so then you can quickly take a look and serve as reference. You can also show your model the image if you need. Next would be extra SD cards and batteries. Although everything might go okay, on the off chance, your card can corrupt, your data can be deleted if you're like me and you forget to charge your batteries. You may go to a shoot, turn on your camera and think, damn, I literally only have 1 bar left for 2 hours. So making sure that you have some extras in your bag will really just help you feel at ease and not have to stress like that. This is optional, but having an extra lens could be really fun if you want to play around. 95% of my shoots, I shoot with a 15mm 1.4. It's been the same lens since I was 15. It's just nice, nifty, and portable. But recently I did treat myself to a 24-70 2.8 lens, which has really been fun to experiment with wide angle shots. So you have your mood board, you have everything planned, you're at the shoot. What do you do to make it the best time possible? I'm going to talk you through what I did at this shoot, which if you don't recognize them, this is Photosoc's lovely studio manager, Chinolo. These were taken last fall for their birthday shoot at Photosoc Studio. Definitely check it out, little plug. But something I wanted to note here was that it was one of the first times we actually met in person. Because of Zoom University, we really didn't know each other all that well. So that's why I thought it'd be important, because since we didn't know each other and we were going to spend a couple hours, I wanted to make sure that it was a really great environment for everybody. So what did I do first? I started off by setting the mood, energy, and vibes. Make sure you're well rested, make sure you're prepared. But like I said before with the music, I brought some speakers and I had made a playlist in advance. But I also asked Chinolo if there's any music that helped them feel really hyped. So we started playing that, and instantly it just made everything feel a lot more relaxed. We were like dancing around, singing, and having a lot of fun. Next would be positive reinforcement. You want to make sure it's a really positive environment, because how your model feels will really translate through the lens and the final image. So what I like to do is every so often, after taking a few photos, you can show your model and go through it together as photographer and model to figure out what works and what doesn't. One thing though is there are some things that may not be flattering. That is totally inevitable because you're going to take hundreds of images. But instead of being like, this looks really bad, let's not do that, that can feel really crappy to hear. Instead, you can be like, oh my gosh, I loved when you did this pose. This looked amazing. Why don't we try this instead? Why don't we modify this? So again, it just creates a really positive atmosphere. At the end of the day, you need to remember that your model is doing an incredible job, but they do not have a mirror. They have no idea what's happening. So they're really trusting you as the photographer, your vision and your creative eye to make sure that you are capturing them in the most flattering light. So make sure to hype them up, make them feel really good. Honestly, at this shoot, I don't really hold back. When I'm excited, I start screaming and I'm super stoked. So it can lead to really great candidates, but again, making your model feel comfortable. Next is so important. Let's talk about consent for a hot minute. If you need to adjust their hair, if you need to fix something on their shirt, please make sure that you ask your model for permission to touch them and that they consent yes, because we need to make sure that our models feel safe and comfortable and that everyone all around has a really good experience. Finally, create an environment where you can experiment and be creative. Of course, like I said before, you need to be prepared, but at the same time, you should give yourself some flexibility, have some fun. During this shoot, say on the picture on the right, I was like, hey, let's try something fun. Can you move your hands around and just have some fun motions? Even if you think it looks weird, it's totally okay. And then I ended up with that shot, which I absolutely love, and it was one of my favorites from this shoot overall. So creating that really collaborative experience where I also asked Chinolo if there's anything that they wanted to do really helps enhance the moment and time spent together for everybody. Next, like I said before, I'm just going to be briefly touching the surface on editing. Editing I see it as the cherry on top, because it really helps separate your work from other photographers and you can help develop your unique style. There are a bunch of different styles, and I'm sure you've seen on Instagram, people do light and airy, dark and moody, colorful and saturated. At the end of the day, it's just whatever speaks to you. That being said, Lightroom can be incredibly scary. I know for me, I didn't start using Lightroom until the end of first year, just because it looks so daunting. Like, look at those sliders. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to break down these two parts of it that I think beginners would be really good at getting familiar with. First of all is the basics panel. If on your phone you've ever used Visco, Afterlight, even the thing that's built into the iPhone, you can definitely handle basics panel. It includes exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, and all that. The nice thing as well is with the little sliders, you can kind of drag them back and forth with your image. You can see how it affects the overall picture and figure out what you like and what your style is. After that, you can kind of graduate into two-tone curve, which when I first saw it, I was like, oh no, not math. But I promise you, it's not that scary. Starting with the bottom left, those would be your shadows. So that is the area of the darkest part of your image. Midtones is the middle area, and then followed with the top right corner are the brightest parts of your image. What you do is you would click along the line and create little graphing points, and dragging it up and down will change the brightness and overall contrast. So again, I just say play around and just see how it affects your image, but there are some really good tutorials on YouTube that you can definitely check out. Okay, this is the part I'm most excited on, how to get started. I figured it'd be really helpful to create some action items for you all on how you can get started with your portraits today. So first thing I would definitely recommend is to build a portfolio. So even if you feel like you're behind, but you needed to have a portfolio yesterday, please just remember that everyone starts from somewhere, and that's totally okay. First thing that I'd recommend doing is styled shoots with friends or family. I think the thing that scares a lot of people about portraits is the fact that you do have to work with people. Having to direct, be assertive, articulate, and communicate can be really daunting for a lot of introverted people or just people who aren't used to it. So again, it's just all about building that practice and just gaining that confidence. So something that I did was get my friends out. I already had planned shoots, mood boards, and all my dream ideas, drag them out and done these shoots. So because you know them and they know you, you don't really have to build a rapport. Everyone's really comfortable with one another. So it's more so just like gaining that experience as the photographer with communication and directing and posing. After that, and you are more comfortable with guiding people, you can do what's called a TFP collab shoot. So TFP is trade for print. So essentially, whoever is modeling for you shoots for free, you shoot for free. So it's all pro bono, but everyone benefits at the end of the day with the final images. One Facebook group I'd highly recommend checking out is Vancouver Photographers and Models. You can do a model call to be like, hey, I'm looking for X person for a Y kind of shoot. Anyone interested for TFP? And more often than not, a lot of people are interested. So check that out. If you do want to pursue photography as a business in any aspect, whether it's part-time or full-time, top thing I'd highly recommend is making a website and creating a business email. Instagram is nice. So nice to be able to see all the pictures in the gallery, but at the same time, having a website and a professional email that you can send things to and from with can really help elevate the professionalism, and people can be like, oh, this person's really taking it seriously. This is a legit business. Let's go. So definitely do that. Second would be is to shoot what you want to get hired for. If at the end of the day, you want to shoot more editorial images and more magazine-esque styles, then posting pictures of pets and dogs will not really get you anywhere. Your portfolio should be reflecting on your skills, your talent, and what you want to get hired for, because if any future client comes across your portfolio or your website, then they can really envision how hiring you will help them achieve their final creative vision. Next, I thought I'd lightly touch on settings that I like to use outdoors versus in studio, because it can be different. Again, this is just my personal opinion and my personal preference, so take this with a grain of salt if you will. Outdoors, I like to shoot with f2 and higher. Although my 50mm lens can go down to 1.4, I don't really like to risk the chance of things not being in focus. So I find that f2 is the lowest that I like. But my personal favorite is 2.8. And so this picture of Ronnie and Mariana was taken with 2.8 just to make sure that her eyes were in focus. In the studio, however, for me, I like shooting f7 or higher just because I like things to be more in focus. And if you're ever doing any full body shots where you want the whole outfit to be in focus, that's why I'd recommend that. In terms of the softboxes, I feel like, again, this is very subjective, but I always start with 1/8 and adjust accordingly. Next, I thought it'd be really nice to talk about some pose ideas. Over time, I've built a little repertoire of go-to poses where in a pinch, if I truly forget all of my mood board, I like to start here. So these are some poses I do at almost every single shoot, regardless. First one would be to hold a prop. I feel like the classic question everyone has is, what do I do with my hands? Honestly, fair enough. I deal with it all the time myself. So whether it's flowers or glasses, or if you're in a coffee shop holding a mug, or you can be like Cecilia in the bottom image with a telephone, having your model hold something will keep them occupied. They're less hyper-focused on what they're doing, and just it really helps them and their mindset a lot. You can also tell them to play around with the objects. So say in the top right corner with Amrit, with her sunglasses, I got her to take it on and off. So again, it gave her something to do, but then overall that motion just helps the image feel a lot more organic and less stiff. Next would be the baddie squat. I did not know what to call this, but I thought Chindola looked so good, so I really just wanted to hype them up. How you achieve this look is first you squat and you make sure that the model has a relatively straight back. And then with their arms, you can either have them relax like Chinolo does or straight out. Next would be sitting. I feel like this is an incredibly beginner-friendly pose just because everyone knows how to sit. It's incredibly versatile with location. So you can be in the studio like Rhiannon or Taryn, or you can be outside sitting on stairs like Cecilia. Sitting is also nice because it is one less body part to worry about, kind of like the whole what do I do with my hand situation. And so in these pictures, Rhiannon is using her hands to hold her foot or her leg. Taryn is using her fingers and kind of just playing with them. And then Cecilia is resting her arms on her knees. As well, this can be versatile because you can play around with different body angles. So say with the left with Rhiannon, her left shoulder's a little more forward, her right's a little more back. Taryn's just chilling and vibing. And then with Cecilia, I got her to lean more to the left, but also towards the lens because I was situated a little bit lower than her. Next would be hold a pee. I'm calling it this because I saw it on a TikTok and I don't really know how else to describe it. This is my personal go-to if I want pictures of myself for my own Instagram, just because I truly do struggle with the what do I do with my hands, and I find this is a nice go-to. How I achieved this is I shifted my weight to one side. So in this picture, it was my left. I jutted out my hip a little bit, and then with my hands, I'm pretending that I'm holding a small little green pea. But the nice thing with this is one, the model can kind of fidget with their fingers, which can be really good. So then it's one less thing to worry about and the mind is more occupied. But also you can get them to kind of rock back and forth with their weight. So then you also get the same natural looking vibe. The final pose would be resting on the hand. So as Joyce and Nathan are showing, with their left arm, they wrapped it around their body. With their right elbow, they rested it against their hand. And then with your right hand, you can do a bunch of things. So Joyce is literally leaning in and resting it on her cheek, or Nathan just has it out. But the one tip I would have with any image, but particularly this pose, just make sure that the fingers are curled. This is a lot more flattering, a lot more editorial, but it just overall looks more intentional. So I thought I would add some photographers who were incredibly integral for me growing as a photographer and my skills, as well as my favorite videos I'd highly recommend you all to check out. So starting off with the top left corner is Julia Trotti. She is an Australian editorial photographer, so talented. My favorite video of hers is composition tips for portrait photography you need to know. Then below her is Mango Street, comprised of married couple Rachel and Daniel. They do a lot of artsy, quirky, out-of-the-box concepts. I love them because they are inspired by a lot of films. So doing the more cinematic shots is something that I'm super interested in. And their favorite video of mine is take better photos with these tips. Next, in the top right corner is Samuel Elkins. He's a California-based lifestyle and natural light editorial photographer. He's honestly one of my favorite people. He also shoots a lot of film, which is fun. And one of my favorite videos of his is posing and photographing people who aren't models. Finally, in the bottom right corner is Ms. Jessica Whitaker. She is Seattle-based outdoor and studio portrait photographer. Fun fact, she now follows me on Instagram, so I'm trying really hard to stay calm and not fangirl. But my favorite video of hers is 8 ways to pose and improve portrait photography instantly. Next, I thought I'd add 2 opportunities you can do while you're at UBC. I feel like the nice thing in university is there are a lot of opportunities, but sometimes people just don't know. So I'm here to share the info. First, I'd highly recommend starting as a photographer at Disorder Magazine. It's all volunteer based. I have been volunteering with them since the summer, and I feel like this is a really great way to build your portfolio. How it works is you sign up and they put out a call to see if anyone's interested in covering any stories. And once they assign you a piece, you get to work with someone you don't know. So again, it's good because you're building the foundation of communication, guiding, and being assertive. And you can be as creative as you want. So the one in the left is Rhiannon, and they are an incredible playwright. So this was a fun studio shoot I got to do with them. And then the next thing I'd recommend is doing team and exec portraits. So if you're involved in a club, you can ask to take pictures of your team. I would say 90% of the clubs at UBC do meet the exec pictures in the fall or sometimes in the beginning of winter semester. So the nice thing about this, again, really great for portfolio building, really great for communication and growing those skills, but as well, you're shooting so many people in such a small amount of time. So I think it's just really time effective too. So here are some final takeaway tips for you all. The first one would be, if you have a hard time explaining the pose, physically show them. More times than not during a shoot, I will literally go right beside my model and actually demonstrate the pose so that they can emulate exactly what I'm doing. The next thing, this is so important, is focus on the eyes. When you look through the viewfinder and you see the little black square thing, make sure it's focused on the eyes because that's where the emotion is shown. That's what people want to see. People don't want to see just the focused nose and everything else is bokeh. Third is move around and shoot from different angles and perspectives. Particularly for people who are not comfortable in front of the camera, it can be really hard to make them model like 20 million different poses. So as a photographer, you can really challenge your creativity. So say this picture of Talia, I took it really from a lower angle, kind of eye level, but if I were to go closer as a close-up shot, do a wide panorama shot, switch around the different directions because you have 360 degrees of your model, it really can make for fun and creative images. Fourth would be to relax, be comfortable, and have fun. Of course, shoots are stressful. I still get nervous before a shoot, but I think at the same time, if you're too stressed on the day of, it really just takes away enjoying the experience and enjoying the process. And like I mentioned before, the more relaxed and fun and hyped you are to be there, your model will feel the same since you really do bounce the energy off of each other. Fifth would be to stay curious and always be willing to learn. Something I think that I would attribute a lot of my skills to is the fact that I was always learning and educating myself in between classes, homework, and life. Any free time I had was watching YouTube and watching those videos from photographers that I was mentioning before. And I was able to apply a lot that I learned into my shoots, and I think that's why I have gained my skills. Finally, and most importantly, is just shoot whenever you can. Get your camera out. And if you have any inkling of any idea, call on some friends, do a model call online on your Instagram, and just get shooting. You're really not going to grow as a photographer if you don't shoot. Even if you are an absolute perfectionist like I am and you want everything to go well, just know that you're constantly trying and you're one step closer to becoming better. There are a lot of shooters of mine, honestly, that will never see the light of day, and that's okay, because I know at the end of the day that I was consciously putting myself out there and challenging my creativity. So thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate y'all being here, and I hope you learned a trick or two. If you ever want to contact me, DM, say hello, hey, and chat. My Instagram is Tamara Chang Photography. My website is tamarachang.ca, and my email is contact@tamarachang.ca. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Sarah, so the second video, if you're talking about the picture of Serena, yes, that is from the 3 photographers shoot 1 model challenge. Oh my gosh, Chinolo, yes. That was such a fun day though. Seaming, how do you deal with or edit skin tones when color grading? Ooh, great question. So when you're in Lightroom, there's the HSL panel, which stands for hue, saturation, and luminance. Hue is incredibly important because you can slide it around and change the actual hue of that color. So say if you took a picture and your skin tone of the model is too orange, you can slide it a little more to make it more yellow and kind of balance it out. But I'd say the tip and trick is just try to make sure that everything is as best as it is in camera, because then it's less for you in post. I wouldn't treat post as like the best thing to do. I think it's just making sure that everything is as good in camera. Let's see. Does anyone have any other questions? If someone wants to unmute, that'd also be really nice too. Any tips for black and white portraits? Ooh. I'd say, to be honest, I don't shoot that many black and white portraits. I do usually do color, and then if there's anything that I like, then I switch to black and white. But I think you can focus on the contrast and the shadows since you're not really focusing on the color at that point. So say if you're in the studio, that's why some people like to do the one light on one side, because then it creates a really dramatic image and you can play around with those shadows. You're welcome.
Okay, I know like at the beginning you mentioned that like bring speakers and bring music, especially like, yeah, because shooting in silence is awkward. And I know it's like really good to bring that, especially if you're just starting out, because it's also for yourself, for you to not feel as awkward. So do you have like recommendations for what kind of music to bring?
Ooh, love that question, Frankie. I think with the music, you need to base it on the actual theme of the shoot. If you're going for a really like somber, sad gal shoot, you're not gonna be playing like Cardi B. So be mindful of the shoot that you want to do, but also it's just like kind of the vibes that help you feel at ease. I mean, Spotify has so many great curated playlists. I usually like to just put super happy hype music or some like chill R&B vibes. So personal preference for sure. I know, sorry, Jack. I do like Cardi B too. If we have time to critique some of my pictures, sure. I think that's something that I'd have to check through with the events team to see what they have planned. But yes, I think it's a good thing to suggest to know when to use black and white or color to begin with. Yeah, for sure. Would be a difference in film and digital portrait photography. So unfortunately, I am not as well versed in film. I do dabble in it, but Bren, our equipment manager, is a huge film photography fanatic, and he's a lot more well versed than I am. So definitely direct any film questions towards him. But I feel like both would kind of be the same. It's just more of being mindful of the settings with film. So Bren says mostly money and more restrictions to your shoot. Yes, absolutely. I think the nice thing with digital is that, first of all, make sure that everyone shoots in RAW. So then when you edit, if you really do shoot too dark of an image, sometimes you can recover it and save it, but you're more likely to be able to save things versus film. Film, that's why it's so important to make sure things are as good in camera as possible.
Hey, so I saw that you do a lot of outdoor shoots. I was wondering, like, if you could speak about like when the light's not good, like if you're planning for a sunny day shoot, like how do you like go around that?
What type of weather are you thinking about when you're saying like crappy weather? Are you talking about like more overcast, like clouds, or?
Yeah, I was talking about like if it's like you're planning a sunny day shoot and then it's like cloudy.
I'd kind of say I feel like with nature, because you never know, you kind of just have to make do with it. So the picture of Joyce, she was the one with all the sunflowers. We weren't really sure what the weather was going to be. It actually said it was supposed to rain, but you kind of just have to make do and you learn to adapt on the spot. I personally really like cloudy days because I feel like it gives a nice diffused look. With more of those cloudier days, I would recommend to make sure that the model is actually facing more towards the light versus away, because it is already so soft and diffused and sometimes a little bit dark.
Earlier in the workshop, you mentioned like if you're working with someone and you really like a pose, to like encourage them, like saying, oh, like let's try that again. I really like this, and like stepping up with confidence. But what if they don't know any poses? What do you do? Like how do you know like what's best for them, or like how do you recommend? Do you have any tips regarding that for someone just starting?
For someone just starting, I would say start with a really easy pose and just modify a little bit. So sometimes what I've done with people who are truly not comfortable or like used to being in front of the camera, say if you're starting with like a sitting pose, right? There's so many little things that you can do to switch it up. So say if you're sitting cross-legged, you could have them with their hands back. You can have one arm forward. You can kind of get them to hold their legs a little bit, be a little more chill. So just doing little bits of movement would be good. I think also instead of directing them into some really like insane editorial pose, you be like, hey, can you just like slowly move your arms like this, slowly just like walking. Also, walking shots can be really good because again, it's giving them something to do. Like if they're holding like a coffee and you're like, can you just walk down the street? Things like that, again, to keep them occupied is what I'd recommend. Pranav, any good spots to shoot on campus? Well, shameless plug. We did the top 9 spots to shoot at UBC. So check that out on YouTube and Photosoc's Instagram. So yeah, 9 locations. Julio, the videographer, and I scouted them. They're super fun. Would highly recommend. Okay. Seeming, if you're forced to shoot on a really sunny day with harsh sunlight shadows, how do you deal with that? Do you use diffusers, reflectors, or any pose that is particularly flattering in this condition? Great question. So you definitely could use a diffuser. One of the locations for that 9 location shoot, we did use a diffuser and it was really helpful. I typically don't, just because sometimes it can be hard to find an extra person who will kind of be your assistant and you don't want to have to rely on anyone. Obviously it's great, but sometimes you have to make do. I would recommend shooting with backlight. So what that means is if there is the sun, you want to make sure that they're completely behind. So then your light is evenly on your face. So you're shooting with the sun behind you and it's kind of lighting up your hairline. So then if you shoot like that, and in that point, I usually shoot at like f4 sometimes, then you can go into Lightroom and bump up the shadow, which is like the dark part of your face. So then everything is a little more illuminated. In the sunlight, the top tip that I would recommend is just make sure the highlights, so say the brightest parts of the image, are correctly exposed. Because say if you're shooting and then they're like the sky is completely white, you can't get any of the highlights, you can't get any of those details back. So always adjust for the highlights, the brightest part of your image, and then in Lightroom, you can recover the dark areas. Thank you, Frankie, for plugging that. Ooh, Tower Beach. I've always wanted to shoot at Tower Beach. Any other questions? Also, if you do have any more questions down the line that you can't think of right now, that's totally okay. Feel free to send me a DM on Instagram and I'll be happy to answer.
Okay, I'll pop in here. Just this is a quick question, not that might help not only me but some of the others in here. the Photosoc office hours, are they still at normal hours right now, even though classes haven't returned to in person yet?
That would be, yeah, a Martin or Frankie question.
Sure. For now, the office hour is only going to be there every Tuesday and Wednesday. That will be from 12 to 4. We will always have someone there in the office who can assist with you. But it's only for Tuesday and Wednesday for now.
Yeah,
Got it.
we're
Thanks,
gonna
Ryan.
expand. We're gonna expand it by 1 day at least, but we have not created a schedule because we want to make sure we have someone available all the time. But yeah, expect to see that new added date soon.
Got it. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Any tips on composition